In the world of science fiction, few stories are as strange and surprising as what really happened behind the making of Flash Gordon. It's a movie that almost never got made, and when it finally did, everything about it, from the actors to the costumes, turned into chaos. It began in the 1970s with a dream, one that changed the entire course of movie history. At that time, a young director named George Lucas had just made a hit with American Graffiti. He wanted his next project to be something he had loved since childhood, Flash Gordon. As a boy growing up in Modesto, California, Lucas had watched the old Flash Gordon serials filled with rocket ships, alien planets, and brave heroes. He thought it would make an amazing modern movie, so he went to King Features Syndicate and tried to buy the rights. But he was too late. The famous producer Dino De Laurentiis already owned them. Lucas begged and even tried to negotiate, but Dino refused. That single no changed movie history. Because Lucas couldn't make Flash Gordon, he went home and decided to create something new, a space adventure of his own. That idea grew into Star Wars. If Dino had said yes, there might never have been Star Wars. Ironically, the project Lucas once wanted so badly was later overshadowed by his own creation. But Flash Gordon had another potential savior, the legendary Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini. Fellini had loved Flash Gordon since he was young. When Mussolini banned American comics during World War II, Italy began making underground copies, and rumor has it that Fellini even helped write some of them. He loved the bright colors and wild imagination of those stories. When Dino De Laurentiis asked Fellini to direct the movie years later, everyone thought it was a perfect match, but Fellini turned him down. Dino didn't take the rejection well. As a petty revenge, he added a small creature in the movie named Fellini, played by Deep Roy, as an insult disguised as a joke. Then came Star Wars in 1977, and it took the world by storm. Dino panicked. He wanted to prove that Flash Gordon could be just as big and exciting. So he rushed his version into production. The budget exploded to around $27 million, a huge sum for that time. He filled the film with bright, colorful sets built by famous designer Danilo Donati. But from the very beginning, the production felt forced. The movie wasn't being made out of passion, it was being made out of revenge and ego. The director, Mike Hodges, wasn't even the first choice. Nicholas Reg, the original director, had worked on the film for a year before being fired. Sergio Leone also turned it down because he felt the script didn't respect the comics. When Hodges stepped in, the project was already a mess. The tone kept switching between serious and silly, and the team couldn't decide what kind of movie they were making. The producer, Dino, controlled everything, and it soon drove the cast and crew crazy. The actor chosen to play Flash Gordon was Sam J. Jones, a newcomer with almost no experience. Before acting, he had been a semi-professional football player and even posed nude for Playgirl magazine under a fake name in 1975. He beat out both Kurt Russell and Arnold Schwarzenegger for the part simply because he looked like the comic book hero, tall, blonde, and athletic. But on set, he constantly clashed with Dino De Laurentiis. Their arguments turned into shouting matches and even physical fights. The tension became so bad that Jones walked off the set before filming was finished. The production had no choice but to hire someone else to dub most of his lines after he left. The voice you hear in the final movie isn't even his. Almost all of Flash Gordon's dialogue was recorded by other actors, mainly Peter Marinker. For 40 years, most people never knew that the hero's real voice wasn't in the movie. The problems didn't stop there. Melody Anderson, who played Dale Arden, went through a terrible experience while filming a scene that didn't even make it into the movie. She was supposed to appear as a green spider creature in Flash's hallucination. It took 4 hours to apply the body paint and heavy costume, and then she sat still for 6 more hours covered in fake blood. Finally, the director told her they wouldn't use the scene after all. 10 hours of pain, all wasted. Even worse, the green paint was so strong it wouldn't wash off easily. Brian Blessed, who played Prince Voltan, was another unforgettable presence on set. His booming voice was so loud that sound engineers struggled to record him properly. He often shouted his lines and improvised his dialogue, making it difficult to stay on script. Despite that, his famous "Gordon's alive" line became one of the most quoted moments from the film. Blest loved Flash Gordon since childhood, and even wanted Buster Crabbe, the original Flash, to appear as Flash's father. But the studio rejected the idea. The actors who played the Hawkmen suffered the most. Their large metallic wings looked incredible but were horribly uncomfortable. They were sharp, heavy, and impossible to sit in. Between takes, the actors had to lie flat on the floor with their wings spread out because they couldn't sit in chairs. Melody Anderson later said it looked funny but was painful and exhausting. Timothy Dalton, who played Prince Baron, also had a miserable time. During one of the big fight scenes between Baron and Flash, the silver-painted platform they fought on hadn't dried properly. Each time they filmed a take, both actors got covered in silver paint. The crew had to stop filming repeatedly to scrub the paint off their skin. What should have taken hours ended up taking days. Dalton later said it was one of the most physically demanding roles of his career, not because of the action, but because of how poorly everything was managed. Finally, Flash Gordon was released on December 5, 1980, right in the middle of the hype surrounding The Empire Strikes Back. Dino thought that releasing another space movie around Christmas would bring in huge profits. But the film wasn't even fully finished when it hit theaters. They pushed it out anyway, hoping people would come during the holidays. The movie premiered in the US on December 5, in Spain the next day, and then in the UK with a royal premiere on December 10. Unfortunately, it didn't go as planned. While Flash Gordon performed well in the UK and Italy, it failed in the US. It made only $3.9 million during its opening weekend, a huge disappointment for such an expensive production. It eventually earned around $27 million, barely covering its costs. Critics called it a colorful mess, and audiences were confused by its strange mix of comedy, camp, and serious drama. One of the few parts of the film that truly worked was its soundtrack, created by the rock band Queen. The idea to hire them came from director Mike Hodges, but Dino initially thought they were too much. Still, the band accepted the offer even though they were already busy recording their album The Game. During the summer of 1979, Queen worked in Munich, splitting their time between the album and the movie. They only had 1 month, November 1980, to finish the entire Flash Gordon soundtrack before the film's release. It was an insane schedule, and because of it, they had to delay the release of their greatest hits album by a whole year. Despite the chaos, the soundtrack became one of the movie's most iconic elements. The production was bleeding money from every direction. The film was originally supposed to cost around $15 million, but it nearly doubled by the end. Some sources say it reached $30 million, 3 times more than Star Wars. Part of the reason was Sam Jones's sudden departure, which forced the studio to redo scenes and add expensive dubbing. Another was the enormous, hand-built sets and elaborate costumes. By December 1979, the cast and crew had been sent home for the holidays. When filming was set to continue in January, Sam Jones didn't return. He had quit for good. Dino De Laurentiis later said it might have been the first time in Hollywood history that a leading man walked out of a $30 million movie. Director Mike Hodges had to finish without him, using stand-ins, stuntmen, and creative camera angles. Many scenes showing Flash Gordon after that point actually feature body doubles instead of Jones. The editors did such a good job hiding it that audiences didn't notice for decades. Meanwhile, actor Max von Sydow, who played the villain Ming the Merciless, faced his own nightmare. His costume was incredibly heavy, over 70 pounds, made from layers of armor, fabric, and fiberglass. It looked stunning on camera but was torture to wear. Max, who was in his 50s at the time, could only wear it for short periods before needing breaks. Filming his scenes took much longer than planned because he had to rest constantly between takes. The cast wasn't just dealing with exhaustion. The silver paint used for the movie's sets and costumes turned out to be toxic. Many actors and crew members reported rashes and breathing problems caused by the fumes. Safety precautions were minimal, and people were simply told to keep working through it. By the time filming wrapped, the production was a complete disaster. The lead actor was gone, the budget had doubled, and the schedule had been destroyed. But somehow, they finished it. When Flash Gordon finally hit theaters, it didn't become the blockbuster Dino had dreamed of. Critics mocked its over-the-top dialogue and cartoonish style. But over time, something strange happened. People started to love it. It became a cult classic. Its campy tone, bright visuals, and Queen's unforgettable soundtrack gave it a strange charm. Years later, documentaries and interviews revealed all the chaos behind the scenes, the fights, the dubbing, the pain hidden beneath the glitter. Sam Jones admitted he regretted leaving, but also said he was treated badly and wasn't paid what he was promised. The crew spoke about long, exhausting days, and the actors joked about how impossible the costumes were. Even though Flash Gordon wasn't the success Dino wanted, it became something else, a weird, colorful time capsule of 1980s cinema. It was the movie that George Lucas couldn't make, the one that Fellini rejected, and the one that nearly destroyed its own star. It was filled with problems, mistakes, and ego battles, yet it somehow survived. Decades later, fans still watch it, quote it, and sing along to Queen's theme song, proof that even chaos can create something unforgettable. In the end, Flash Gordon was both a failure and a legend. It never reached the heights of Star Wars, but it carved its own strange place in pop culture. Behind the shiny costumes and heroic speeches was a story of broken dreams, bruised egos, and one of the most chaotic productions in movie history, a wild reminder that sometimes, even disasters can become icons. The story behind the 1980 movie Flash Gordon is much stranger and darker than anyone imagined. On screen, it looked like a colorful space adventure filled with wild costumes, bright sets, and rock music by Queen. But behind the scenes, it was chaos, danger, and exhaustion. From toxic paint to broken wires and secret voice replacements, nearly everything that could go wrong somehow did. What ended up as a campy cult classic was born out of confusion, frustration, and even a little bit of cruelty. One of the most dangerous parts of filming came during the spinning platform fight scenes. The entire surface was coated in metallic silver spray paint, which looked shiny on camera but was incredibly unsafe. Every time the actors filmed the scene, the paint stuck to their skin and clothes. After each take, the crew had to scrub the paint off Sam Jones and the others. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was toxic. The kind of spray paint used back in 1980 contained heavy metals and strong chemicals that weren't meant to touch human skin. The fumes made breathing difficult, and the chemicals could cause rashes and irritation. Still, the production continued as if nothing was wrong. The actors were expected to keep working through the pain. The costumes were another nightmare. The famous Italian designer Danilo Donati was in charge of creating all the clothes and sets. He was known for his dramatic and over-the-top designs, and he had already won Oscars for his work. For Flash Gordon, he designed more than 600 costumes filled with gold trimmings, huge collars, and layers of embroidery. They looked amazing in photos but were impossible to move in. The materials were heavy, hot, and stiff. Actors could barely walk or sit. Some had to be lifted or supported between takes because their costumes were so tight. Donati's creativity made the movie look beautiful, but it made life on set unbearable. Because the movie was filmed in England instead of Italy, Donati couldn't work with his usual team. He had to rely on a British costume company that mostly made clothes for music videos, not feature films. The results looked stunning, but they weren't practical for long hours of filming. Ornella Muti, who played Princess Aura, had some of the most complicated outfits. Her bright red suit and bejeweled accessories looked incredible, but they were so tight that she could barely move. Crew members had to help her stand or walk. Her costume changes were like full events that needed several people to manage. On screen, she looked like royalty. Off screen, she was trapped in fabric armor. The saddest part was that many of those 600 costumes were never even used. Because the script kept changing, dozens of outfits were built and then left in storage, never seen on camera. Director Mike Hodges later said the production felt like the most expensive improvised movie ever made. There was no clear plan, and so much talent and effort were wasted. The heat on set was another serious problem. One of the movie's biggest sets, Sky City, was built to look like a glowing futuristic world. It needed enormous lighting rigs to make the gold and red surfaces shine, but those lights made the entire space feel like an oven. They couldn't use fans or air conditioning because the microphones would pick up the noise. Brian Blessed, who played Prince Voltan, had to wear heavy feathered armor under the blazing lights. He and the other actors sweated so much that they lost weight during filming. They powered through the scenes with sheer willpower, trying to make it through without collapsing. Then came one of the riskiest setups in the whole film, the rotating death platform. In the movie, it looked like an exciting spinning fight with sharp spikes rising from below. But those spikes were real, and the platform was actually dangerous. It was motorized and could tilt mid-scene, so the timing had to be perfect. Timothy Dalton, who played Prince Baron, rehearsed for weeks to avoid being hurt. The slightest mistake could have cut someone badly. Below the spinning platform, the crew created a pink mist effect to make it look like a deadly pit, but the real danger was already on the platform. One slip and someone could have been seriously injured. The flying Hawkmen scenes were supposed to be some of the most thrilling moments in the movie, but in reality, they were terrifying. The actors were attached to wires that kept breaking or tangling. Wind machines were used to make it look like they were flying, but the strong air currents only made things worse. Actors would sometimes spin out of control or dangle helplessly in midair while crew members rushed to lower them down. Brian Blessed, who did most of the flying scenes, said that every moment that looked exciting on screen felt like a rescue operation behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the production was falling apart. The budget had ballooned to $27 million, but the set was full of confusion. Actors often got their lines just minutes before filming. Sam J. Jones, who played Flash Gordon, said he was constantly thrown into new scenes without time to prepare. The script changed so often that it barely made sense. Mike Hodges had joined as director only 3 weeks before filming began, after the original director, Nicholas Reg, quit. The crew was a mix of Italians and British workers who couldn't even speak the same language fluently. Some sets were still drying from fresh paint when the actors walked into film. Nobody knew what was happening from one day to the next. Sam and Melody Anderson, who played Dale Arden, had to rely on instinct. They used eye contact and body language because the story was constantly shifting. One of the film's most famous scenes, the football-style fight, wasn't even planned. It started as a joke when Sam began pretending to play football with one of the set props. The director loved it and decided to keep it in the movie. Ironically, that unscripted moment became one of the most memorable parts of Flash Gordon. It even fit the character's backstory since Flash had been a football star before his space adventure. Sam's athletic background was real. He had been a Marine Corps football player, trained in Taekwondo, and ran several miles daily to stay in shape. His energy made the football scene look authentic, even though it came from pure improvisation. Brian Blessed's performance as Prince Voltan was another chaotic success. He admitted he didn't really understand the story, which might be why his performance felt so spontaneous. His most famous lines, like "Dive" and "Gordon's alive," weren't even in the script. He just shouted them during filming, reacting to the madness around him. His booming voice and confusion turned into the perfect energy for his character. But behind the laughter and excitement, the set conditions were rough. During the flying scenes, the Hawkmen actors were suspended 60 feet in the air in front of a massive blue screen, surrounded by 1,000,000 watts of lighting. Their wings were made of stiff materials, so they couldn't sit down. Between takes, they had to lie flat on the floor, exhausted and sore. For decades, people believed that Sam J. Jones's voice in the movie was his own. But in 2020, film historian John Walsh discovered that this was not true. He revealed that at least 3 different actors had been used to dub Sam's voice. Peter Marinker was one of them, but not the only one. Sam's real voice was blended with others to create what audiences heard. Sometimes it was him, other times it was completely someone else. If you listen carefully, his voice changes slightly from scene to scene, higher in one moment, lower in another. For 40 years, no one noticed. In August 2020, a Reddit user posted about this discovery, and fans were stunned. They couldn't believe that Flash Gordon's voice wasn't real. The post went viral, and people began comparing scenes, realizing the differences. Director Mike Hodges later confirmed it was true. He admitted that multiple actors had dubbed the voice, but the records of who they were had been lost. He said it wasn't a conspiracy, just poor record keeping. But by the time he passed away in 2022, no one had ever found out who the mystery voice actors were. John Walsh's research later uncovered that these dubbing actors had been completely erased from the movie's history. Their names weren't in the credits, and their recordings were destroyed. They never got paid properly or recognized for their work. Their voices helped bring the main character to life, but no one even knew their names. It was one of the clearest examples of how Hollywood can forget the people who do the real work behind the scenes. The chaos of Flash Gordon didn't stop it from becoming a cult classic. Even though it was mocked at first for its over-the-top style, fans later came to love it for the same reasons critics hated it. The bright colors, wild costumes, and Queen's unforgettable soundtrack gave it a charm that no polished movie could ever recreate. But the truth is, the fun on screen came from real suffering off-screen. Toxic paint, burning lights, broken wires, heavy costumes, and secret voice dubs, all of it created a film that nearly destroyed the people making it. When audiences watch Flash Gordon today, they see a fun, campy adventure. But behind those sparkling visuals lies a story of exhaustion, danger, and forgotten workers. The magic that fans love so much came at a heavy cost, one that the actors and crew carried long after the cameras stopped rolling.